Would you say that you had fun failing?
Actually, yes. I had a lot of fun failing.
All right, well, welcome back, everyone. Last week's episode, episode 0, had 20 downloads, Jeff. Can you believe that? You only thought we were going to have 3.
3? Oh, I'm very impressed.
We had 20. So anyway, yeah, that was episode 0. So we're jumping ahead now to the very next thing, which would obviously be, let's see, what follows after 0? Let's see.
0.1.
There you go.
Yes.
So... this episode is a reflection on what we did at Self, our RagChew that we did. I will have the link in the show notes so you can go watch it. Warning, it is 4 hours and 19 minutes. But it's fun, and I tease Jeff a lot, which is always entertaining.
To him. And probably all to you also, but to him especially.
Yeah, it went both ways.
I'm pretty sure that's why you wanted me to do this with you, so you could just make fun of me the whole time. But
No, not really. Not really.
Oh, okay. Whatever you need to tell yourself, that's fine.
Yeah. So for this episode, we just wanted to kind of reflect back on what happened and see what our thoughts was. And hopefully we'll get some emails in about what you guys thought, and then we can talk about that as well. So Jeff, let's start off with, how do you think it went?
I think it went very well. I think the thing I didn't care for, honestly, was the fact that we didn't have any success but the one that I really didn't want for a long time. That's what I would say went poorly.
We're going to cover that in another episode.
Yeah.
That'll be coming up shortly.
Yes,
but
we will.
aside from your favorite distribution,
my least favorite,
that being Linspire, so everyone is on the same page. You were frustrated that worked right out of the gate and nothing else worked.
Yes, I was extremely frustrated about that because it felt like, God, why is that our only success? And we didn't even really install that on the system. And typically, you'd say a live boot system would be more likely to crash and burn than, I install and everything is normal. And the live boot system worked fine. So it's like doubly irritating that the thing I didn't want to work worked, and it worked as the live system and nothing else did. But at the same time, I also recognized we were trying to install very old systems using less old pieces of hardware, namely USB-mounted floppy drive and USB-mounted CD-ROM drive, and there was going to be some failures, and we knew that going in. I kind of wonder if we'd had, not to stick the knife in or anything, if we'd had older hardware, if you'd had anything lying around we could use, then it would have worked better.
So I don't have much old desktop hardware. That's the problem. Most of my older systems are all laptops, which then becomes a problem when you want to attach an extra floppy drive or a CD drive to the system. Mm-hmm. I had an older IBM that would have worked, but it didn't have a CD-ROM.
Right.
And I have not been able to find the compatible CD-ROM that IBM shipped with it, because probably people who have it want $1 bajillion for it.
Almost certainly.
And I don't really know what kind of support the kernel would have had for those at the time anyway. At least with the USB, because it is modern enough that it actually emulates an old style drive.
Yes.
There's that kind of middle ground where everything is shaky, and I'm actually having a problem with this on some older BOS installs that I'm trying to do on my own on the side. Is I have a system that has a CD-ROM, it's an other IBM, has a CD-ROM and a floppy, but the kernel doesn't recognize the CD-ROM. Mm-hmm. So the floppy boots, it gets there, and it goes, okay, now I'm searching for boot disks, and it can't ever find the CD-ROM because it doesn't understand the hardware, even though they're from the same time.
So if you had no other way to acquire hardware or anything like that, how would you fix that? I'm guessing you'd have to pull the kernel off of the boot disk and build an environment to recompile it, but add the driver in? I mean, would that even be possible?
I mean, for Linux, you could maybe do that.
Yeah.
For BOS, obviously, it's closed source. You can't do that at all.
Oh, good point. You said BOS.
I tried booting a newer kernel and then trying to get to the drive, and it sort of worked, but then the graphics went haywire. So I'm still messing around to see what I can come up with. But yeah, so on Linux, that would be kind of tricky because they may need certain hooks inside the kernel that didn't exist prior. So you end up in that chicken or the egg problem.
I believe you're right.
And then you're like, well, let me just re-implement this subsystem in the kernel so that I can then build a driver to then use it just so I can actually access my hard drive or my CD-ROM, so then I can install a system. Like that's
Or we can
that's
find other
fun.
hardware that'll work.
Right, that's really fun, and you should definitely do that. But that's not something you're going to pull off quickly.
Right. It's an investment. It seems like the kind of thing that would be fun to do, but at the same time, I'd be like, I did all this work. It worked great. I would love to do some write-ups on it. Let's go talk about it. But now I'm to the point where, I was just playing around with BIOS, and now I get to work.
Yeah, that would be an interesting talk for a conference, though.
It would.
About how you took an older kernel, added a new subsystem, so you could then compile a new driver, so then you could install the old stuff. Like that would be a really interesting talk. I definitely think you should submit that for itself next year.
You think I should?
I think you should. I think that'd be great.
Okay, I'll get right on that. We have 11 months, so.
Yeah, you got plenty of time.
That's right, I do.
So, hypothetically, what type of hardware do you think we should have on hand next time we want to do this?
IBM XT 486 would be ideal. I don't know. Did 486s, did they have CD-ROMs? Yeah, they did. Yeah, because we had one. My folks had one. We used to play Myst on it. It was one of the very earliest CD-ROMs that was not fast enough to actually copy video data off of the CD so that you could play the game. So it would be kind of choppy, but we did have a CD-ROM and it did work. So
any chance your parents still have that machine?
No, it's long gone. They don't tend to keep stuff that old. They keep a lot of stuff. My dad's closet in the study has a lot of old stuff, but nothing like that. They also used to have an old Atari that they got rid of for reasons that I don't know why. As a kid, I was always looking for, I knew it was in the attic somewhere, and I kept looking in boxes to try and find it, but they apparently got rid of it. I would have loved to play around with that. They don't have it, but I'm sure someone in my area does have it. I'm sure somewhere someone's got the hardware that we could try with, or we could ship it out there. I'm sure someone, within a couple hours of you has it too. Maybe someone listening has hardware that we could try this on.
There's a place, I think it's somewhere in Dallas, that's an old hardware place that has a ton of stuff. Mm-hmm. It was actually featured on LGR, his YouTube channel.
Okay.
I think that was in Texas. I think it was in the Dallas area. Maybe not.
Well, there's a lot of collectors and a lot of old, because we have some, Silicon Prairie kind of thing. So we have a lot of old collectors and old engineers doing things.
Yeah, it would definitely be nice to have something that wasn't a laptop. Laptops are great for when you want to do old school gaming and stuff because everything is kind of self-contained. But when you really want to get into a lot of older stuff, having desktop hardware is probably the way to go because that was the main target for developers.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I'm sure that someone somewhere who's listening to this says, wait, I do have an old 46 lying around in a closet that I have no idea what to do with it. I forgot was there. It's probably got 9 miles of dust on it. But if you do, pull it out, dust it off, see if it boots. If it gives you a BIOS screen, give us a call. We'll see if we can take another crack at some of these old distros on camera and have some fun with it. Because I really would love to get some of these very old distros that we were working on working.
Yeah.
We were very
I would recommend
close.
not giving us a call, though. Give us an email.
An email.
Do that.
Yes, an email. Yeah. Who calls anybody anymore? I only ever text. I don't call.
Yeah, the oldest desktop machine that I have is, I believe, an early Pentium. But I don't know if it powers on or not. I have a feeling there's probably more than a couple caps that are bad.
Yep.
Because it was not cared for at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was in an industrial environment for its
yeah.
life, so
it's
you can imagine.
Chock full of dust and other things, maybe dead cockroaches or mouse droppings or anything like that. I have found, we'll talk about this in a future episode, I found computers that have been sitting in a warehouse somewhere and there was actually dead mice in them. Mm-hmm. So at a sale day.
Yeah. Well, that's not true. I do have an older desktop.
Okay.
It is an old IBM PS2 Model 25.
That would probably, I don't know what Model 25 means, but it sounds like the right era of what I'm thinking of.
It's not, because it's a 286.
Oh, okay. It's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely not going to be supported for a distro that requires a 486.
Okay. You're right, because I think Linux required a 387 coprocessor was one of the requirements.
I don't know if it required a 387, but I think the earliest Yggdrasil I have was definitely 386 or higher.
And I knew it was 386. Yeah, it did not run in 286. I needed protected mode, I believe. Mm-hmm. So, I think it was later that it started saying, well, if we're going to do any floating point, you need the 387 coprocessor. And then 46 came out. It didn't really matter anyway because they all had coprocessors already in there. And then we stopped thinking about them as separate units. Kind of interesting if you think about that evolution.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then we came back to it with the Intel Phi. Like, hey, let's have co-processors, and it's effectively what a lot of GPUs are
Yeah, exactly.
used for now.
And I'm starting to see or wonder if we're going to see more. I've seen talk about dedicated physics engine cards, much like you'd have a GPU engine card, because they need slightly different things. They're similar lineage, but they need different things. And so you would have a graphics card and then a physics engine card. So no, NVIDIA's been trying to bundle some physics engine
So
stuff onto
they
their
did
cards.
that for a while. Yeah, they did that for a while, but they found that it actually didn't really make a big difference.
Really?
So you can just take any extra GPU and dedicate that as your physics card.
Okay.
However, I don't really know if it is going to help at all, because I don't know how much is built into the new game engines to actually really take advantage of that. And doing the I/O back and forth might actually take longer than just doing it direct on the card you're on.
I can see
I
that.
know that I think I read something a little while ago about the potential of them maybe doing that with new RTX cards, of having specific ray tracing cards that you could then add in to increase your ray tracing capability or add ray tracing capability to a system that otherwise doesn't have a GPU or doesn't have a GPU that can do that. But I don't know. That's, who knows what NVIDIA's
I'm
gonna do.
envisioning a very fancy GPU that doesn't have the massive heatsink on it, and instead has slots for daughterboard cards, like add on a physics this or add on additional pipeline slots there. That would get really ridiculously fancy at that point, and probably north of $1,000. But if you really need it, you need it.
There's some speculation that some of the newer Intel Z graphics might do that.
Okay.
But it's just speculation at this point.
Yeah.
However, to bring things back, would you say that you had fun failing?
Actually, yes. I had a lot of fun failing. I had the most fun, I think, interacting with people while we were failing. And I say we, it wasn't just me. We failed at numerous installs, but it was really fun to work with people, and they would suggest what we were supposed to do, or they would offer advice, or when we couldn't remember a thing, they'd be like, no, you're supposed to do this. Or one guy was admonishing me not to touch or pick up the floppy drive while it was operating, which was probably smart.
Yeah, because that made it disconnect because the USB connection wasn't actually that good.
Well, I think he was indicating I didn't want to lift the drive because that would make it not read properly. I don't believe that's the case. I think what was happening is, like you're saying, the plug, because you had to hold on to it there for a little while. Now, was that the plug on the laptop, or was that the socket on the laptop, or the plug of the device? Which one was it?
That was the socket on the back of the IBM.
Okay, so that made it even more unlikely to have worked for us. Well, there's only so much we can do. We worked within the parameters that we had, and I still think it was a lot of fun. I hope it was enjoyable to watch. And I also enjoyed just the trip down memory lane and thinking about all the things like, that distribution came out roughly when it did this. And it was nice to go back and refresh my memory on all these things that I lived, and I didn't think they were very important at the time. But now here in retrospect, these aren't trivial things. This is some of the advancements we talked about along the way made huge, increases in Linux possible. The specific example that comes to mind, when we jumped to using CD-ROM only for all of our boot stuff, that was a big improvement, and it was non-trivial to do. It took a lot of work. But man, when that happened, all of a sudden, this interchange between, I have to boot off floppy and then move to the thing with all my hardware, that was no longer necessary. Because that handoff was always a little bit clunky in the early days, and you weren't always sure it was going to work. Like, it didn't work for us several times. That kind of stuff, it didn't really mean much to me then, but now going back, that was a huge improvement. And it was nice to revisit that and realize just what a big deal it was, what an engineering achievement it was that we were putting everything on our system on one CD-ROM. Or sometimes two, like Slackware for a while came on two CD-ROMs because it had so much stuff. Anyway, that kind of part, I really enjoyed the history part of it. And I hope our watchers and listeners did too.
Yeah, it was. I had a lot of fun. It was fun watching someone else struggle, because I do this sometimes in my free time. Is I'll just grab one and try to install it, and then I sure sucked at that one. So it was nice. It was nice just being able to sit back and go, oh, good, he sucks just as much as I did.
Oh, thank you for that vote of confidence.
Yeah, or maybe it's just a confirmation that this was a lot harder than I originally thought it was going to be.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I hope you take it as both.
But anyway, the link for that video will be down in the description, in the show notes. Definitely, as I said, it's over 4 hours, so you will need to kind of set aside some time, maybe watch it in chunks, whatever, and let us know if you'd like to see more of that stuff, and then we'll do more of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Please say you'd like to see more of that stuff, because I enjoyed it.
So, okay, I think that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Have a great time, and remember, be excellent to each other.